Hello, I'm Michael Anderson from the Nonprofits Assistance Fund. The Nonprofits Assistance Fund is a 501c3 based in the Twin Cities but working across the state of Minnesota and surrounding communities. Our mission is to develop financially healthy nonprofits that foster community development across our state of Minnesota. We do that by providing transformational loans as well as strategic financial guidance through our training and financial management technical assistance programs. With us here today to further discuss and explore this concept of sustainability within nonprofit organizations, we have Sandy Graves from Neighbors in Action. Neighbors in Action is a nonprofit based in La Crescent, Minnesota, working with older and disabled adults. We also have Colleen Fritsch. Colleen is the Director of Volunteer Resources at DARTS. DARTS is a nonprofit that works in Dakota County in South Twin Cities Metro, working with older adults and their families dealing with life transitions.
Colleen and I want to talk with you about designing a sustainability plan for a nonprofit program. In this scenario, we're using an outdoor chore program for older adults, but the same process would work for other services as well. As we go through this process, you will notice that we have made a lot of estimates or educated guesses. One thing is for sure, the program that you design will never work exactly as you have it planned, but we want it to be built around solid logic, and therefore as time goes on, you will only have to make modest adjustments to the program rather than starting from square one.
We found that there are basically 3 steps in developing a sustainable program. The first is to estimate your costs per unit, then develop a sustainability strategy, and the third step is to identify your stakeholders. Even though Sandy and I have similar programs, you'll see as we go along that we found very different answers and very different variables in our program. What matters is the process and making it work for you. In our case, our first step was to estimate costs. We knew that for our outdoor chore program, we were going to hire 1 new staff person solely to manage that program. So clearly our biggest cost would be the salary expense that went along with that person. In addition, we knew we'd need some equipment. There would be a pickup truck, a used pickup truck, and we'd spread that cost out over several years. But then all of the supplies, the rakes and the shovels and the snow blowers if we could afford them, and the lawnmowers and all of that, altogether that was about $50,000 worth of annual expense. In addition to those direct costs, there are indirect costs you need to consider. The IT support that you're going to get from staff, the financial and accounting support that you're going to have, and overhead costs. In DART's case, we were adding a program to an existing organization, but we still needed to take on our responsibility for our overhead and structure and utility costs. In addition, there's insurance. And don't forget to take a look at your agency's insurance policy. Again, in DART's case, because we were going to have volunteers out in the community using equipment like lawnmowers and snow blowers and rakes, we had to consult with our insurance company as to what that increased exposure might give DART's in terms of liability. Also, there might be funders that have required insurance coverage that you need to cover. You just need to be aware of that, and if that's going to be an additional expense, you need to add that into your program costs, and of course, add that to your funding request from that funder. We estimated there'd be about $5,000 per year of those indirect costs, making our total program cost $55,000 a year. The next step is to identify your organizational capacity. Clearly, you aren't going to expect this program to be up to capacity in year 1, but you'll need to envision what this program is going to look like when it's at capacity. You'll need to make some educated guesses and well thought out estimates. Something brought you to the decision that you needed to create this program. Go back to that original thought process and begin to quantify the need. Then take that and estimate your capacity from that. So here's what we thought when we estimated capacity. We thought it would take us about 3 years to estimate capacity, and when we were there, we'd serve about 75 older adults in the spring and fall with yard work. In the summer, we'd serve maybe 50 older adults with lawn care 16 times over the course of the summer. And in the winter, we'd serve 50 older adults with snow removal, probably 10 times for a Minnesota winter. If you add that all up, that's 1,450 service units. Now we knew how many times we'd be serving these older adults, and we knew that we'd be estimating about $55,000 a year for program costs. So now we could determine the cost for each unit of service. It comes out to be just under $38 each time.
Our journey to developing an outdoor chore program has been quite different than Colleen's in several ways. First of all, we were developing a program in La Crescent, Minnesota, which is a small rural community of about 5,000 people. It's very different to develop a program in a small rural area than it is in a metropolitan or a suburban area of the Twin Cities. It makes a difference in the cost people are willing to pay for services, and the way people look at paying for services, and really in just how people consider the program in the community altogether. Second, we were establishing a brand new organization to meet several different needs. Outdoor chores is one of the services that we wanted to provide, but we also were going to provide transportation, light housekeeping, companion and respite services, as well as some social and educational opportunities for people. It's a little more difficult to break down the cost of a salary when we were hiring one person to coordinate all of these services rather than one person to coordinate each individual service. Because our program was completely new to the community, we were also making a real guess at the number of requests for services that we were going to receive. We had done a lot of survey work. We had talked with older adults, we had talked with service providers, we had talked with churches, and we knew that there was a need. We had looked at gaps analysis, different things like that, so we knew there was a need for the program, but we really weren't sure how the community was going to receive the program and how many people were actually going to come forward and ask for service. Your next step is to develop a sustainability strategy. There are many things to consider, not the least of which is your agency's vision for who you want to serve and how you can best sustain your efforts. So here are some things to consider. Is there a particular target group you are trying to attract? What will your fee schedule communicate to that group? Now is the time to develop talking points with all your staff and volunteers and get them involved in this process. Does your organization or do associated funders have fee policies that you need to follow? For example, if you're working with a grant funder, they may require you to have a fee structure in place. Do you have a target amount of revenue that you want to generate from your sliding fee scale? In Colleen's case, they wanted their fee structure to pay for their coordinator's salary and benefits package. In our case, because that one person is also responsible for other programs, our goal is to recover 25% of the staff's salary from the fees generated from our outdoor chores. Is there a point where you will expect your service users to pay their entire cost of the service? In both of our cases, we said no. We would in some way subsidize all of our users. How much revenue does your organization have that they can use to subsidize this program? In our case, that answer is as little as possible.
When we went through this process, we knew that from a fee perspective, we wanted to maximize our reach and minimize our impact on the overall agency to ensure that the program could succeed. This meant attracting and retaining clients from a cross-section of economic circumstances. We knew from our information and assistance calls that there was an opportunity for us to serve wavered clients, and we hoped we could find other funders who would help us serve other low-income clients. But we needed to balance that out with other clients who could pay most or all of the cost of the service in order to insulate the program from fluctuating funding streams and to ensure the program's sustainability. So we set our sliding fee based on income levels. But our policy has always been that no one is turned away because they can't afford to pay. If we suggest a fee to someone and they can't afford that, then we ask them to tell us what they can afford or to just make a donation to the organization on behalf of our outdoor chore program.
When we started our program, we felt very strongly that we did not want to charge seniors a fee for the services that we were going to provide. We felt that it would make it difficult to recruit volunteers, and we also felt that the seniors that we wanted to serve were very low income and simply couldn't afford to pay for the services. We eventually came to the conclusion, after 2 years of providing service, that our organization wouldn't be able to survive if we didn't begin implementing a sliding fee scale. Also, and on a side note to this, we really learned after 2 years of providing services that the seniors were really proud and they wanted to pay a fee for the services.
Next, we want to talk about identifying stakeholders. These are potential sources of funding or even in-kind support. We've talked a little bit about government agencies. We provide ACEW caddy services. There's Title IIIB funding under the Older Americans Act. There's also potential for county support. And quite unexpectedly, we found a city in Dakota County that wanted to help us. So the city of Burnsville came to DARTS and said, could you provide services for those older adults who can't afford it, and we'll pay? That's less expensive for them than taking the older adult to court, and quite clearly, a better public relations move as well. So for the last 5 years, we've been doing that, and we've offered this service to other municipalities in Dakota County to have the cities help their older adults, and that has worked well for us.
One stakeholder would be community partnerships. The United Way, churches, school districts. They're going to be different in your community depending on what resources you have available to you. In our situation, we developed a great partnership with our local school district. They would provide us with space to house our organization for no charge, and in exchange, we built a relationship with the seniors in our community who could in turn help pass referendums when the school district needed them.
Those great service organizations we have in our communities, the Lions, the Kiwanis, the Rotaries, they're not only great sources of volunteers, but if you need a lawnmower, or if you need a snowblower, or if you need just some general equipment, they're another good source for those dollars to help pay for those supplies.
We also look to private corporations and organizations to help sustain you, both for dollars or in kind, as well as for volunteers. Some of these may include Toro, Lowe's, Home Depot, large and small employers, faith congregations. Consider who you have for resources in your community and look to them to help support you.
The secret to working successfully with different funding sources is in data tracking. In our case, we have a field set up in our database called providers. That doesn't mean what volunteer is providing the service. It means who's providing the fee, whether it's ACEW caddy funding or Title IIIB funding or funding through the community service development grants. We identify that for each service that we go out. Then when we're talking to our funders about the impact of their dollars, we can clearly identify who was served by their dollars and get that message out to them. If finding a database like that is something you're going to need to consider in order to be able to do the reporting you need, be sure and add that back into those program costs so that you've got it built in as part of your program.
Finally, we want to say a few words about finding funding sources for those initial startup years. All the work that you have done up to this point is building the case for your funders. You've created the case, and you've also developed the strategy for how you're going to meet the needs in your community. We know that there are funders out there who like to fund programs for startup programs rather than existing programs. There are, of course, organizations like the Department of Human Services that you can go to for funding. This program uses volunteers, engages the community in collaborative ways, and increases the capacity of the organization to meet the growing population of older adults in Minnesota. All of these things are attractive to potential funders. So good luck, and if you have any comments or questions, just post them and we will get back to you.